Competition. Competition is a strange thing because as human beings, we can get competitive over the silliest things. For me, one of the things I get the most competitive over is actually a game of Monopoly. I just don't like to lose, but that's just about it anything. We love to compete, but we don't like to lose. And so sometimes when we have a bad day or a bad moment, we can really get stricken with that loser mentality. Man, I'm horrible. I've lost my identity. I'm searching. And so we started a new series actually entitled Loser, and it's basically the journey of Paul on his missionary journey to the church of Philippi. As he's talked with the Philippians, as he wrote back to them, and later, in the book of Philippians, 15 years later. But we see how Paul's moments seem to glorify God, even though to us, by human standards, seemed like he was losing. See, Paul entered the town of Philippi. He met this woman by the name of Lydia, and by meeting her, she gave her heart to Christ and led her family to Christ. And so as they were in town, she invited them to come and stay with her and her family. And so as they stayed there, they continued to fellowship. And the next day they met this demon-possessed woman who had a gift of fortune-telling and was owned by some men. And so she was gone out to make them money. And so she came in contact with Paul. Paul got tired of actually hearing her demon possession and healed her. But upon this, her owners were very upset and had him and Silas and Luke and Timothy all beaten up and imprisoned. And then they met the prison guard upon the earthquake that came that night, that loosened their shackles, that opened the gates. And so as they led his family to Christ as well. Now the interesting thing is, we might look at this and say, "Wow, Paul, that was a loser kind of day. You lost today." See, Paul saw that as Christ's gain. See, if he hadn't met Lydia, he would never have led them to Christ. If he hadn't met Lydia, he'd never met the demon-possessed woman and saved her and led her to Christ. If he had never met either of those two, he'd never been beaten up and imprisoned and met the prison guard and brought his family to Christ. See, our loser moments are Christ's gain. Those moments when we feel like we're in the bottoms, we're in the pits, we're searching for our identity, we don't know who we are, Christ continues to say, "I know exactly who you are, and you're winning." But by our earthly standards, so often we say, "Well, this was bad luck and this is fortune. Why would he do this?" Christ doesn't do these things to us. The broken world does. But Christ can use our broken moments for his glory. And we want to continue to encourage you and your students to focus on that idea that even though it might be a bad day or a bad season of life, that Christ can still use those because people are watching and growing by our example of how we handle different moments of our lives. Continue to check theparentbridge.com for signups and events and also related articles on different parenting tips, things that are happening in your students' lives that we'd like to keep you informed about.